The Krell survey ship came out of hyperspace at the edge of the solar system. Commander Vexthon stood on the bridge looking at the view screen. His 3 fingers gripped the railing as he stared at the distant blue planet called Earth. 500,000 years had passed since the Krell first came to this world. Back then, humans were simple creatures. They lived in caves and made basic tools from stone. The Krell scientists had written reports saying these creatures might become smart someday, but that day was millions of years away. Or so they thought. "Commander, I am seeing something strange," said Science Officer Talwyn. Her voice sounded confused and worried. "There are big structures all over the system." Vexthon felt his stomach tighten. "Show me what you found." The screen changed to show what the sensors had detected. Giant space stations floated around Mars. Each one was as big as a moon. Around Venus there was a huge ring that glowed with power. But the most shocking thing was around the sun itself. Thousands of metal panels floated in perfect patterns collecting energy from the star. The Krell had never built anything so complex. "This is impossible," Vexthon said quietly. "Find out who built these things." Talwyn worked at her station, checking the data again and again. When she looked up, her blue face had turned pale. "Commander, the computers say humans built all of this." Vexthon could not believe it. The Krell had been traveling between stars for 12,000 years. They were one of the oldest and smartest races in the galaxy. But these primitive apes had somehow passed them in just 500,000 years. How could this be real? "Try to contact them," Vexthon ordered. He tried to keep his voice calm, but inside he felt fear growing. The communication officer sent messages in many different languages. Nothing happened for several minutes. Then suddenly, every screen on the bridge showed the same thing. A human face appeared, looking directly at them. The man looked young, maybe 30 years old. He had brown hair and green eyes that seemed very calm. He wore simple gray clothes with no badges or symbols. When he spoke, the words came out in perfect Krell language. He even had the right accent. "Welcome back," the human said with a small smile. "My name is Peter Cole. I speak for all of humanity." "Hello, Commander Vexthon of the Krell Exploration Fleet. It has been a very long time since your people came to our world." Vexthon felt cold fear run through his body. How did this human know his name? How did he know about the old expedition from 500,000 years ago? "I know you must have many questions," Peter continued. "We knew you would come back someday. Your people left a small probe at the edge of our solar system. We found it 400,000 years ago. We have been watching it ever since, waiting for the signal that would tell us you were coming home. 400,000 years of watching and waiting." The idea made Vexthon's head spin. "What happened to your species?" Vexthon asked. His voice came out harder than he meant it to. "How did you build all of this?" Peter's smile went away. His face became serious. "That is a long story, Commander. It is not easy to explain. But you came here to learn about us, so we should show you the truth. You should know what we have become." He stopped talking for a moment. "But I must warn you. What you will see may upset you. We are not the same creatures your ancestors met long ago." "We are scientists," Vexthon said, trying to sound brave. "We want to know the truth no matter what it is." "All right," Peter said. "I am sending you the location where you can land on Earth. Come down to the surface. We will show you everything. But please understand something, Commander. Once you see what we truly are, you cannot forget it. We are very different now." The screen went dark. The bridge was silent. Nobody knew what to say. Talwyn turned to look at Vexthon. "Sir, this might be dangerous." "We do not know what they can do. They might want to hurt us." Vexthon thought about this. The Krell had always believed they had the best weapons in the galaxy. They thought they were safe from any threat. But now, looking at all the impossible structures floating in this system, he was not so sure. Maybe the Krell were not the strongest anymore. "We came here to observe and learn," he said at last. "That is exactly what we will do. Get a team ready. We are going down to Earth." The ship began moving toward the blue and green planet. As they got closer, Vexthon could see more details. The planet looked different from the old records. The continents were in the same places, but everything else had changed. There were lights covering the land, bright patterns that stretched across entire regions. The air seemed clearer somehow, and the oceans were a deeper blue. Vexthon kept thinking about Peter's warning. "There is no unseeing it," the human had said. What did that mean? What had humans turned into? Part of him wanted to turn the ship around and go home. He could report that humans were now advanced and dangerous. He could recommend that the Krell stay far away from Earth. It would be the safe choice, the smart choice, but another part of him needed to know. He had spent his whole life studying other species, learning about how life developed on different worlds. This was the discovery of a lifetime, a species that had jumped from stone tools to star-spanning civilization in just 500,000 years. That should be impossible, but here was the proof floating all around him. "Commander, we are ready to launch the landing craft," said the pilot. Vexthon took a deep breath. "Then let us go. Whatever is down there, we will face it." As the small landing craft separated from the main ship and began its descent through Earth's atmosphere, Vexthon looked out the window. He could see the massive orbital structures more clearly now. They were not just big, they were beautiful, built with a kind of grace and precision that seemed almost alive. What could have driven humanity to build such things? What purpose did they serve? And most important of all, what else had humans learned to do in 500,000 years? Soon he would have answers. He just hoped he could handle the truth when he found it. Peter's face kept appearing in his mind, that calm smile and those knowing eyes. The human had looked at him like someone who knew a terrible secret, like someone who pitied him for what he was about to learn. The landing craft shook as it entered the thicker atmosphere. Through the window, Vexthon could see Earth rushing up to meet them. Somewhere down there, Peter Cole was waiting. Somewhere down there, the truth was waiting. And Vexthon had the terrible feeling that once he learned that truth, nothing would ever be the same again. Part 2. First Contact Redux. The landing craft descended through Earth's atmosphere, and Vexthon watched in amazement as the planet revealed itself. The last time his people had visited, Earth was a world of forests, oceans, and scattered primitive settlements. Now it was transformed beyond recognition. Cities stretched across entire continents, but not the sprawling urban decay the Krell had seen on other worlds. These cities were integrated seamlessly with nature, massive structures that seemed to grow from the Earth itself, covered in vegetation and pulsing with gentle light. Rivers flowed through architectural marvels that would have taken the Krell centuries to design, let alone build. "The air composition has changed," reported Lieutenant Kextar from the pilot's seat. "Oxygen levels are higher than our records indicate. The entire atmosphere has been optimized. They terraformed their own planet," Talwyn breathed. "But why? It was already perfect for their biology." The landing craft touched down in a vast garden that seemed to serve as some kind of landing port. As the team disembarked, Vexthon noticed that gravity felt slightly lighter than it should. Somehow, humans had even managed to adjust their planet's gravitational field. Peter Cole was waiting for them, along with 2 other humans, a woman with black hair named Lisa Grant and a man with graying temples who introduced himself as Henry White. They wore the same simple gray clothing, and their expressions were welcoming but carried an undercurrent of something else. Sadness, perhaps, or pity. "Welcome to Earth," Peter said, gesturing to the incredible vista around them. "I imagine this is quite different from what your ancestors documented." "How?" Vexthon asked simply. "How did you achieve all of this in such a short time?" Peter exchanged glances with his companions. 500,000 years may seem short to you, Commander, but for humanity it was an eternity. Walk with us. We'll explain." As they walked through the garden, passing trees that hummed with barely contained energy, and flowers that seemed to shift colors in response to their presence, Henry began the story. "After your people left, humanity continued to evolve naturally for several thousand years. We developed agriculture, civilization, technology. About 12,000 years ago, we reached our industrial age. 10,000 years ago, we achieved nuclear fusion. 9,000 years ago, we left our solar system for the first time." Vexthon struggled to process this. The Krell had taken 40,000 years to progress from industry to fusion. Humans had done it in 2000. But that was just the beginning, Lisa continued. 8,000 years ago, we discovered something your people may not have encountered yet. The threshold. "The threshold?" Talwyn asked. "It's what happens when a species becomes advanced enough to fundamentally alter their own biology and consciousness," Peter explained. "We learned to modify our DNA to enhance our brains, to extend our lifespans. At first, we lived for hundreds of years." The landing craft broke through the clouds and Vexthon pressed his face to the window. What he saw made him forget how to breathe for a moment. Earth was nothing like the records showed. The old reports described forests and oceans and small villages scattered across the land. Now, huge cities covered the continents, but they were unlike any cities Vexthon had ever seen. These buildings seemed to grow from the ground itself, covered in green plants and glowing with soft light. Rivers flowed right through the structures, and everything looked natural and artificial at the same time. "The air is different," said Lieutenant Kekstar from the pilot seat. "There is more oxygen now than the old data shows." "They changed their whole atmosphere. They terraformed their own planet," Talwyn said, her voice full of wonder and fear. "But why? The planet was already perfect for them." The landing craft touched down in a huge garden that seemed to be some kind of airport. As Vexton walked down the ramp, he noticed something strange. His body felt lighter. Somehow humans had found a way to change their planet's gravity. Peter Cole stood waiting for them with two other humans. There was a woman with black hair who said her name was Lisa Grant, and an older man with gray at his temples called Henry White. They all wore the same simple gray clothes. Their faces looked friendly, but there was something else in their eyes. Sadness, maybe, or pity. "Welcome to Earth," Peter said, waving his hand at the incredible view around them. "I imagine this looks very different from what your ancestors wrote about. How did you do all this?" Vexthon asked. He could not think of anything else to say. Peter looked at Lisa and Henry. They seemed to talk without words, just looking at each other. 500,000 years might seem like a short time to you, Commander. But for humanity, it was forever. Walk with us. We will explain everything. They walked through the garden. The trees made a low humming sound, and the flowers changed colors as the group passed by. Henry started telling the story. "After your people left, we kept evolving naturally for thousands of years. We learned to farm, build cities, and make tools. About 12,000 years ago, we entered our industrial age. 10,000 years ago, we figured out nuclear fusion. 9,000 years ago, we left our solar system for the first time." Vexthon could barely understand this. The Krell had taken 40,000 years to go from industry to fusion power. Humans did it in 2,000 years, but that was just the start, Lisa said. 8,000 years ago, we discovered something your people might not know about yet. We call it the threshold. What is the threshold? Talwyn asked. It is what happens when a species becomes smart enough to change their own bodies and minds, Peter explained. We learned how to modify our DNA, make our brains better, and live much longer. At first, we lived for hundreds of years, then thousands, then tens of thousands. They entered a building made of what looked like living crystal. The walls were clear and kept shifting. Inside, holographic screens showed the history of humanity. Vexthon saw civilizations rise and fall, humans spreading across the solar system and the first trips to other stars. 5,000 years ago, we solved death, Henry said quietly. We became immortal, Commander. Every human alive today can live forever, unless there is an accident or they choose to die. Vexthon felt cold inside. The Krell lived for maybe 200 years at most. The idea of living forever seemed wonderful and terrible at the same time. But immortality brought new problems, Lisa said, her voice heavy. When people do not die, society does not change. New ideas do not replace old ones through new generations. We were in danger of stopping all progress. Peter led them to a huge window that looked out over a city stretching to the horizon. So we did something extreme. We started changing not just our bodies, but our minds too. We made ourselves smarter, Commander. Much smarter. How smart? Vexthon asked, though he was not sure he wanted to know. The average human today has intelligence that would have seemed impossible to our ancestors, Henry said. We can process information faster than quantum computers. We can remember entire libraries perfectly. We can do math problems that would take your ship's computers years to finish. Talwyn spoke up, her voice shaking. If you are so advanced, why do you still look human? Why did you not become pure energy or something else? The three humans looked at each other again, and for the first time, Vexthon saw real emotion on their faces. Deep sadness because we tried that, Peter said softly. 4,000 years ago, many humans decided to leave their bodies behind. They uploaded their minds into a huge digital network, becoming pure information. They called themselves the Ascended. What happened to them? Vexthon asked. They went insane, Lisa said flatly. All of them. Within 100 years, the Ascended became something alien, something we could not recognize as human anymore. Their network turned into screaming chaos, just broken pieces of minds. We had to shut it down. Trillions of people all dead because they tried to become something beyond human. Nobody spoke. Vexthon understood now why these humans looked so sad. They had watched their own people destroy themselves trying to be perfect. After that, we made a choice, Henry continued. We would stay human in form no matter how smart we became. We would keep our bodies, our faces, our ability to touch and feel real things, because that is what made us who we were. Peter turned to face the Krell directly. Commander, you asked how we did all this. The answer is simple. We had time, we had intelligence, and we never gave up. But more than that, we had each other. Humanity survived because we chose to stay connected to our past, to remember where we came from. Even as we reached for the stars, Vexthon looked at these three humans who had lived for thousands of years, who were smarter than he could imagine, yet who still chose to look and act like the simple creatures his ancestors first met. It was both amazing and frightening. There is more you need to see, Peter said. Things that will help you understand what we truly are now. But I want to be clear about something. What we show you next will change how you think about humanity forever. Are you ready for that? Vexthon thought about his mission, his duty to observe and report. He thought about his people back home, waiting to hear what he found. He thought about the massive structures filling the solar system, the impossible technology, the humans who had beaten death itself. Show me, he said. Peter nodded slowly. Then follow us. It is time you learned about the others. Others? Tallowen asked. What others? Lisa's face became grim. The other species we found in space. The ones we tried to save. The ones we could not save. With those dark words, they led the Krell deeper into humanity's transformed world, toward truths that would shake everything Vexthon thought he knew about the universe. The transport pod moved through the city faster than Vexthon could track. Within minutes, they arrived at a building unlike anything he had seen so far. It was a massive pyramid, made of dark material that seemed to swallow light instead of reflecting it. This is the Archive of Sorrows, Peter said as they stepped out. We built it 3,000 years ago to remember our greatest failures. As they got closer, the dark walls began to shimmer. Countless names appeared, written in hundreds of different languages. Most of them Vexthon could not read. There were millions of names, maybe billions, scrolling endlessly across the surface. These are the species we met, Lisa explained. Over the last 8,000 years, humanity explored 60,000 light-years of space. We discovered 347 intelligent species. Vexthon felt excitement surge through him. 347 species! The Krell had only met 12 in their entire history. That is incredible. You must have formed a huge alliance, shared knowledge with all of them. They are all dead, Commander, Henry interrupted quietly. Every single one. The words hit Vexthon like a punch. What? Peter pointed at the wall of names. The Valexians, the Court Collective, the Singing Minds of Epsilon Prime, the Crystalline Conquered, all extinct, all dead by the time we found them or soon after. They entered the archive. Inside was a huge hall filled with displays, each one showing a different species. The first showed insect-like beings, their hard shells preserved in glowing fields. The Clixor, Lisa said, reading from the display. We found them 6,000 years ago. They were spacefaring, about 2,000 years old as a civilization. They had colonies on 4 planets and were close to achieving faster than light travel. Their art was beautiful. Their philosophy was complex. They valued community above all else. What happened to them? Talwen asked. A gamma ray burst from a nearby supernova, Peter replied. It sterilized their home system in minutes. By the time we detected it and got there, they were already gone. 3 billion souls erased in an instant. They moved to the next display. This one showed an aquatic species with see-through skin and multiple eyes. The deep-water singers, Henry said. Their entire civilization lived in the oceans of a moon orbiting a gas giant. They talked using light patterns from their bodies. They had developed a kind of shared consciousness. Beautiful, peaceful, unique, and? Vexthon asked, dreading the answer. Their moon's orbit decayed. Gravity from the gas giant tore the moon apart over 50 years. We tried to evacuate them, but they could not survive outside their specific ocean environment. We saved 10,000 in artificial habitats, but they chose to die. They said existing away from their world was not living. It was just waiting to die. Display after display told the same story. Species after species all gone. Some destroyed themselves in wars. Others fell to natural disasters.
Many simply failed to adapt fast enough to changes. Why are you showing us this?
Vexthon asked, his voice strained. The weight of so much death was crushing. Peter stopped in front of a large holographic screen that showed a timeline of galactic history. Because you need to understand what we learned, Commander. We thought in our pride that because we had overcome so many challenges, because we had become so advanced, we could save everyone. We rushed across the galaxy like saviors, ready to share our knowledge and stop other species from making our mistakes. But we learned a terrible truth, Lisa continued. Intelligence is rare, but survival is even rarer. For every species that reaches the stars, 1,000 die before they get there. For every civilization that lasts, 10,000 fall apart. The universe is not hostile to life, but it does not care either. And not caring is sometimes worse than being hostile. They entered a round chamber at the heart of the archive. In the center stood a huge sculpture. It showed a human hand reaching up, and above it countless smaller hands reaching down, but they never quite touched. We tried to save them all, Henry said, his voice thick with pain. We shared our technology, our knowledge, our resources. But it was not enough. Some species rejected our help, afraid we were invaders. Others accepted but became dependent, losing their own drive to grow. Still others just could not adapt fast enough. And some... He stopped talking and Peter continued. Some we destroyed by accident. We would give them technology without understanding what it would do to their culture. And it would tear their society apart. Or we would solve one problem and create 3 new ones. We had the intelligence to build wonders, but not always the wisdom to know when we should. Vexithan stood silent, trying to process the size of what he was hearing. Humanity had met more species than the entire Krell civilization had in 20,000 years, and every single one was dead. There are only 7 species left in this region of space, Lisa said. 7, including humanity and the Krell. The others are scattered, isolated, fighting to survive. The galaxy is emptier than you can imagine. We stopped exploring about 1,000 years ago, Peter added. We could not bear finding another dead civilization, another species we were too late to save. We came back to our solar system and focused on preserving what little remains. Talwyn spoke, her voice barely a whisper. Is that why you stayed in this system? Why you built all those structures around the sun but never expanded beyond it? Partly, Henry admitted. But also because we learned something else, something even more disturbing. Would you like to see? Vexthon was not sure he did, but he nodded. They had come this far. There was no turning back now. Peter led them to a sealed door at the far end of the chamber. What we are about to show you is our most guarded secret. Only a few thousand humans know about this. We are trusting you with it, because you need to understand what is coming, what might already be here. The door opened to reveal a small room with a single holographic projector. Peter turned it on and an image appeared. It was a map of the galaxy with hundreds of glowing points scattered across it. 2,000 years ago we detected something, Lisa said. A pattern in how civilizations die. Most species fail because of random events like disasters, wars, or mistakes. But some, about 15%, die in ways that make no sense. Entire planets sterilized by unknown weapons. Civilizations that simply vanish overnight with no explanation. Technology that seems to turn against its creators. The map zoomed in on different points, showing dead worlds and silent space stations. We started investigating. We sent probes, ships, research teams, and we found evidence of something else out there. Something that does not want civilizations to succeed. What is it? Vexthon demanded. An empire? A hostile species. We do not know, Peter said, and for the first time Vexthon heard real fear in the human's voice. We have never seen it directly, but we have found its fingerprints. Technology infected with hidden flaws. Peaceful species suddenly driven to killing each other. Engineering projects that fail catastrophically. It is like there is an intelligence out there actively sabotaging new civilizations. We call it the filter, Henry said, and we believe it has been operating for millions of years, keeping the galaxy empty, making sure no species becomes advanced enough to threaten whatever created it. The implications crashed over Vexthon. You think this filter killed all those species you found? Not all of them, Lisa replied, but enough. And here is the truly terrifying part. We do not think we have escaped it. We think we have just delayed what will happen eventually. Peter closed the holographic display. Humanity has built all these wonders, gained all this knowledge, but we live in constant fear. Fear that one day, the filter will notice we have become too advanced and it will come for us. That is why we have stayed hidden in our solar system. That is why we have built defenses you cannot see. That is why we have prepared for a war that may never come, but probably will. Vexthon felt his understanding of everything crumbling. Everything he thought he knew about the galaxy, about how civilizations grow, about the nature of the universe itself was wrong. "Why are you telling us this?" he asked. The three humans looked at each other. Something passed between them, some silent communication that only beings who had lived for thousands of years could share. "Because," Peter said slowly, "we detected something following your ship. Something very old, very patient and very interested in why the Krell suddenly decided to revisit this system after 500,000 years. We think the filter knows you are here, and we think it is about to show itself." In the distance, alarms began to sound. The alarms wailed through the archive as Peter's face turned serious. "It is faster than we expected," he said, his voice strangely calm. "Commander, we need to get you somewhere safe right now." "What is happening?" Vexthon demanded as they ran back through the corridors. "Something just entered the outer solar system," Lisa replied. Her eyes looked unfocused, like she was seeing things Vexthon could not. "Multiple targets. They are not using any propulsion system we recognize." They burst out of the archive into the garden where they had landed. The peaceful scene had changed completely. The sky was flickering with impossible lights. Streams of energy were jumping between Earth and the orbital structures. Vexthon realized with shock that the entire planet was turning into a weapon. "Your ship is trying to leave the system," Henry said, urgency finally showing in his voice. "Tell them to stop. If they run, it will only make the attack happen faster." Vexthon activated his communicator. "This is the commander to all Krell ships. Stop your departure. I repeat, stop immediately." His second officer responded, panic clear in her voice. "Commander, we are seeing massive energy buildups throughout the system. Whatever these structures are, they are powering up. We need to leave now. Stand down," Vexthon ordered. "That is not humanity preparing to attack. That is humanity preparing to defend. Do as I say." After a moment of silence, he got an acknowledgement. Vexthon turned to Peter. "Now tell me what we are facing." Peter looked up at the sky, where dark shapes were starting to appear, visible even in daylight. "The filter," he said simply. "It is finally showing itself." The shapes became clearer, turning into structures of impossible geometry. They were objects that seemed to exist in more dimensions than Vexthon's eyes could understand. They were enormous, each one bigger than Earth's moon, and they gave off a feeling of wrongness that made his skin crawl. "We have been watching these things for 2,000 years, Lisa explained, her voice tight. "They usually stay hidden, working through tricks and manipulation. But sometimes, when a species gets too advanced, too close to whatever line they are guarding, they appear directly. They have appeared 6 times in recorded history," Henry added. "Each time an entire civilization was wiped out within hours. No survivors. No remains. Just empty worlds and silent stars." The dark structures began to pulse with sick-looking light. Vexthon felt something pressing against his mind, trying to get inside his thoughts. Next to him, Talwyn gasped and fell to her knees, holding her head. "Do not let it in," Peter shouted, and suddenly Vexthon felt a barrier appear around his mind. The pressure disappeared. "They attack the mind first. They need you to understand what you are facing before they destroy you. It is part of their nature." "What are they?" Vexthon asked, helping Talwyn to her feet. "We do not know where they came from," Lisa said. "But we know their purpose. They are automated systems, built millions of years ago by a civilization that achieved true galactic dominance. But that civilization is long dead, and these machines are all that remain, still following their programming." "What programming?" Talwyn managed to ask. "Enforcement of the Great Silence," Henry replied. "They make sure no species ever becomes advanced enough to threaten their creators, even though those creators are dust. They are guardians protecting a tomb, and they have been doing it for so long they have forgotten why. Above them, Earth's defenses opened fire. Beams of energy, more powerful than anything the Krell had ever created, shot out from the orbital structures. They hit the dark shapes, and for a moment Vexthon thought they might actually hurt them. Then the filter structures fought back. What happened next was impossible to describe. The filter did not fire weapons in any normal sense. Instead, they changed reality itself. Vexthon watched in horror as sections of Earth's orbital structures simply stopped existing. Not destroyed, but erased, as if they had never been built. "They are weaponizing time," Peter said. His voice strained as he coordinated defenses through his mind link. They can reach back in time and prevent things from existing. It is limited but devastating. How do you fight something like that? Vexthon demanded. With difficulty, Lisa said, and despite the situation there was pride in her voice. But we have had 2,000 years to prepare. Watch. The remaining orbital structures began to move, flowing like water instead of metal. They reformed into new shapes, arrangements that had not existed moments before, and so could not be erased because they had no past to target. Adaptive architecture, Henry explained. Every structure in this system can reshape itself in milliseconds. The filter can erase what was, but it struggles with what is becoming. The battle grew worse. The filter structures multiplied, more appearing from whatever dimension they lived in. They began targeting Earth itself, trying to erase parts of the planet's surface, its oceans, its air. But each time they succeeded in erasing something, it came back seconds later, reformed through processes Vexthon could not understand. We seeded the entire planet with programmable matter 3,000 years ago, Peter said. Every atom on Earth is now part of a huge computer network. The filter can erase parts of it, but the rest instantly rebuilds what was lost. It is a war of endurance, and can you win? Vexthon asked. The three humans looked at each other. We do not know, Lisa admitted. We have never fought them directly before. We have only studied their past attacks. Then something changed. The filter structures stopped their assault and began to pulse together in a rhythm that felt fundamentally wrong. Vexthon felt the pressure on his mind return, stronger this time, pushing past the barriers the humans had built. And suddenly, he understood. The filter was not just trying to destroy humanity, it was trying to communicate. Images flooded his mind, civilizations rising and falling, species after species reaching for the stars only to be cut down. But beneath the violence there was a message, a warning hidden in the patterns of destruction. They are showing us their purpose, Talwen whispered, tears running down her face as she too received the message. They are trying to save us. Save us from what? Vexthon asked. But even as he spoke, he saw the answer. The images in his mind shifted, showing a threat beyond the filter, beyond anything in their galaxy. Something vast and ancient and hungry, sleeping in the void between galaxies, waiting for the right signal to wake. A force so powerful that it made the filter seem small by comparison. The true threat, Henry said quietly. The reason the filter was built. There is something out there that feeds on advanced civilizations, drawn to the energy patterns of species that have mastered too much technology. The filter's creators built these machines to keep the galaxy quiet, to prevent anyone from ringing the dinner bell. By killing everyone who gets too advanced, Peter added. It is a monstrous solution, but from their view it was the only way to save the galaxy from total destruction. The filter's message continued, showing what would happen if humanity kept on its current path. The sleeping thing would wake. It would come, and it would consume not just humanity but every living thing in the galaxy. So what do we do? Vexthon asked, his voice empty. Accept extinction to save everyone else? Peter smiled, and there was something terrifying in that expression. No, Commander. We do what humanity has always done when faced with impossible odds. We find a third option. He pointed at the sky where something new was coming from Earth's orbital structures. It was a ship, but calling it that was like calling a supernova a spark. It was a vessel the size of a moon, covered with technology that made everything Vexthon had seen so far look primitive. We have been building this for 1,000 years, Lisa said. We call it the Exodus. It is not a weapon. It is an escape pod. An escape pod? Talwen asked. For everyone, Henry explained. Every intelligent species left in the galaxy. Every saved mind. Every archived culture, every bit of knowledge we collected from the 347 dead civilizations. We are going to load it all onto that ship and run. Run where? Vexthon demanded. You just showed us there is something hunting advanced civilizations. Where in the universe could you possibly hide? Peter's smile got wider. Not in this universe, Commander. In the next one. The implications were staggering. You found a way to leave our reality entirely? We think so, Lisa said. It is experimental, dangerous. We might not survive the attempt. But it is better than the alternatives. Extinction by the filter, or worse, waking the thing they are protecting us from. The filter structures were changing, responding to the appearance of the Exodus. They were growing, multiplying, preparing for a final devastating attack. We are out of time, Peter said. Commander, I need to know now. Will the Krell come with us? Will you abandon this universe to save your species? Vex then looked at Tal Wen, saw the fear and hope fighting in her eyes. He thought of his people back home waiting for his report. He thought of the countless species that had died, the empty galaxy, the terrible choices that had led to this moment. Yes, he said, we will come. The evacuation happened with perfect efficiency that only humanity, with its thousands of years of preparation, could achieve. Ships appeared from hidden bases across the solar system, each one carrying pieces of human civilization, databanks, biological samples, preserved cultures from extinct species, and most importantly, people. Vex then stood on a platform watching the loading operations. Ships of every size and design moved toward the Exodus like insects drawn to light. His own crew had been taken aboard hours ago, and the Krell homeworld had responded to his emergency message with permission to evacuate any citizens who wanted to leave. It is beautiful in a way, Tal Wen said beside him. She had recovered from the mental attack, but her eyes still had the distant look of someone who had seen too much. The end of everything we know, and yet there is hope. Is there? Vexthon asked. We are running away from our reality out of fear. How is that hope? Peter walked up from behind, his footsteps silent on the platform. Because fear is the only smart response to what we face, Commander. Hope is choosing to act despite that fear. The sky above was getting darker as the filter structures multiplied. Earth's defensive grid kept them away, but barely. Vexthon could see the strain in every flickering shield, every desperate shot of reality bending weapons. The Deepwater Singers, Vexthon said suddenly. You said they chose to die rather than leave their home. How many others made the same choice? Peter's face became sad. About 12% of humanity has refused to evacuate. They believe that leaving this universe means abandoning who we are, that survival is not worth losing our reality. They have chosen to stay and die with Earth. 12% of humanity, Tal Wen breathed. That is billions of people. 8.3 billion to be exact, Lisa said, joining them on the platform. We have honored their choice. Some will fight the filter to the end. Others are spending their final hours in peace, celebrating or saying goodbye to the world they love. We have given everyone the right to choose their own ending. The platform shook as a huge explosion rippled across the sky. One of the orbital defense stations had been erased from existence, its past deleted by the filter's time weapons. We need to board, Henry said, urgency finally breaking through his calm manner. The final calculations are complete. The rift is stable enough for crossing, but it will not last forever. They boarded a transport that took them to the Exodus. Vexthon got his first close look at humanity's greatest creation. The ship was less a vessel and more a universe unto itself, its interior spaces folding through dimensions he could not see. Millions of beings were already aboard, their minds stored in quantum computers that saved not just their memories but their very essence. Not everyone could come physically, Peter explained as they walked through hallways that seemed to go on forever. Matter has limits, but consciousness properly saved weighs almost nothing. We are carrying the minds of 37 billion individuals on this ship, along with physical bodies for about 8 million who will be needed to keep everything running. They reached the command center, a round chamber where holographic displays showed the status of the evacuation. Species Vexthon had never heard of were represented: the singing crystals of Andromeda, the thought weavers of the Veil Nebula, the last surviving members of the ancient precursor race, all of them running through the rift, seeking safety in a reality not their own. The Krell homeworld is sending 3 more ships, Tal Wen reported, watching communications. They are doubtful, but they trust your judgment, Commander. More than I trust it myself, Vexthon said quietly. Another explosion, this one close enough to rock the Exodus despite its size. The filter was breaking through. On the displays, Vexthon watched as Earth's defensive grid began to collapse, points of light winking out one by one. We are out of time, Lisa announced. All ships report ready for crossing. We have 93% of the target population aboard or in the queue. The remaining 7% will not make it. 7%, Henry said quietly. That is 4.9 billion souls we are leaving behind. Peter's jaw tightened. Close the rift behind us once we are through. Do not give the filter a path to follow. What about those still trying to evacuate? Vexthon demanded. They knew the risks, Peter said, though pain was clear in his voice. Every being who chose to run understood they might not make it. We do them no honor by risking everyone else on a useless rescue. The Exodus began to move, its massive bulk sliding toward the rift that hung in space like a wound in reality. Through it, Vexthon could see something that hurt to look at. Colors that did not exist, shapes that made no sense, ideas given visual form. "What exactly is on the other side?" he asked. "We do not know," Lisa admitted. "Our probes sent back data that contradicted itself. Physics seems to work differently there. Time may not be straight. Cause and effect might be negotiable. We are traveling into the unknown guided only by math that might be completely wrong. So we could die the moment we enter," Talwyn said. "We could," Peter agreed.
Or we might go beyond death entirely.
"Or we might discover that what we think of as life and death only exist in our universe. We simply do not know." The filter structures came together, stopping their attack on Earth to focus on the Exodus. They understood now that humanity's ship was the real threat, carrying not just humans but the potential for civilization to escape their trap. Time-bending weapons struck the Exodus's shields, and Vexthon felt the ship shake. Entire sections were erased and remade in milliseconds, the vessel's programmable matter reforming faster than the filter could destroy it. "They are trying to erase our past," Henry said, watching the attack. "They are reaching back to when we first started building the Exodus, trying to prevent it from ever being made." "Can they succeed?" Vexthon asked. "No," Peter said with certainty. "We built the Exodus in a time loop. Its past and future are connected. To erase it, they would have to erase time itself, and even the filter does not have that much power." They were almost at the rift now. Behind them, Earth was burning. Those who had chosen to stay were making their final stand not to win, but to buy time for the others to escape. Vexthon watched as cities died, as monuments built over thousands of years crumbled, as a planet that had given birth to humanity and raised it to the stars was slowly erased from existence. "Goodbye, Earth," Lisa whispered. "Thank you for everything." The Exodus touched the rift and reality screamed. Vexthon's senses overloaded as the ship began crossing. He existed in multiple places at once. He was on the bridge of the Exodus and also back on his homeworld as a child, and also somehow in the distant future, and also nowhere at all. Time became fluid, and he saw the history of the universe from start to finish in a single frozen moment. He saw the rise of the first civilizations, the building of the filter, the countless species that had died to keep the galaxy quiet. He saw the sleeping thing beyond the galaxy, vast and terrible and patient, waiting for prey that would never come because the filter had done its job too well. And he saw what lay ahead. An infinity of universes, each one with its own rules, its own possibilities. Some were hells where life could never grow. Others were paradises where consciousness went beyond matter. And some were like their own, balanced between creation and destruction. Then suddenly they were through. The Exodus came out into a universe where the stars were green and gravity flowed backward, where time moved in spirals instead of lines, and consciousness was the basic force that shaped reality instead of a side effect of it. "Status report," Peter commanded, his voice steady despite what they had just experienced. "All primary systems working," Henry replied. "Hull integrity at 97%. Life support running. Mind storage stable. We made it." Cheers erupted across the command center. Beings from a dozen species celebrated their survival. Vexthon felt Talwyn grab his hand and he squeezed back, sharing a moment of relief that they had lived. But Peter was not celebrating. He was staring at the displays, his face growing worried. "What is wrong?" Lisa asked. "The rift," Peter said. "It is not closing." They all turned to look at the holographic screen showing the tear in space and time they had just passed through. It should have been sealing itself, collapsing. Instead, it was growing, expanding, becoming more stable. "Something is holding it open," Henry said, working frantically at his controls. "Something from the other side." And then they saw it. Through the rift came one of the filter structures, forcing its way into the new universe. Then another. Then a dozen more. They had followed humanity through the escape route, unwilling to let their target flee. "No," Lisa breathed. "They cannot be here. The physics are all wrong. They should not be able to work." But the filter structures were adapting, reforming themselves to match the rules of this new reality. And behind them, still on the other side of the rift, Vexthon could see Earth's final moments. The planet was coming apart, its mass being turned directly into energy as the filter removed the last trace of humanity's home. "Close the rift," Peter ordered, "before more come through." "We are trying," Henry shouted back. "But they have anchored it open somehow. We would need to use the Exodus's main weapon, and that would destabilize this entire region of space." Peter closed his eyes.